Welcome to another episode of Pound for Pound Box Report, episode 414. I am your host, Michael. Um, Joining me this evening, unfortunately, you will not have Gail with us on this particular episode. Uh, she usually teaches. We're recording this on a Wednesday, and she usually, as I always say, Gail teaches part of her job, multiple jobs on the side. She also teaches media, and she usually does that for the time being. She does that on Wednesday evenings, and so she will not be with us. But joining um, Daniel, but joining my yours truly and Daniel from Four Boxing News, Indian Scriber. Heard him on the show a few episodes back. Abe Gonzalez from Pro Box TV and Fansite MMA. What's going on, Abe?
Yeah, what's going on, man? Thank you for having me on once again, and I'm ready to get it popping.
Indeed. For those who are new to Pound for Pound Box Report, Pound for Pound Box Report live YouTube show, podcast, blog, site, etc., discussing all things boxing. The motto is, when boxing is good, we'll talk about it. When it's bad, we'll talk about it. Bottom line is, if it concerns the sweet science in any form or fashion, it will get discussed. If you want to find out all information regarding Pound for Pound Box Report, the site is the place to go to. P4pboxingreport.com. If you wish to email us, you can do so. P4pboxing at P4pboxingreport. On the site, you'll find links to where to check us out on all social media platforms, links to the Facebook page, links to the YouTube channel, links to the pages on Twitter, IG, Tumblr, as well as links to where to find the show all over the podcast realm, wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, be it Spotify, be it Anchor, be it Apple Podcast, be it Google Podcast. You should be able to find Pound for Pound Box Report. If you wish to donate, got a Cash Me, PayPal donation links. Let donation be the best nation. It wouldn't matter if it's $1, $2, $5. We will be gracious. We will graciously accept any and all donations to the show, help the overall production behind the scenes. If you're checking us out on YouTube, please make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. You get all notifications on anything Pound for Pound Boxing Report related. And last but certainly not least, if you check the bottom portion of this opening page on the site, you'll find a link to BODI, formerly known as Beach Body on Demand. If you're looking to get your body right for the summer, BODI Body programs for any and all suitable fitness interests and goals. If you're looking for really challenging hit style, functional style workouts, check out programs like 645, 6 weeks of the work. If you're looking for lift weights, specifically check out programs like Lift 4, Lift More, Body Beast. If you're looking for a morning specific program, check out Morning Meltdown. Programs if you're interested in yoga, Pilates. It runs the gamut. If you're looking for a boxing specific program, please check out 10 Rounds. That is a 6-week program, 3 days of lifting, of boxing based cardio, 2 days of lifting weights. At the very least, take advantage of the free 14-day trial that runs throughout the year. And that is for 14 days, you will get free access to any and all programs on Body, including the sample workout from the new program that's set to drop later this year, early next year. Chop wood, carry water. Let's get things going by recapping the fights that took place really over the past weekend and early this week. Uh, let's get the main fight out the way that took place yesterday morning, U.S. time. We're recording this live on the 26th. The fight between Stephen Fulton and Inoue for U.S. fans took place early in the early morning hours of July 25th. And I'm going to you on this one. Heading into this contest, there were a lot of people who felt that Fulton, who came in as a unified champion at 122 pounds, said that Cool Boy Steph would be Inoue's toughest opponent, right? More than a few pundits and fans out there felt that Stephen Fulton would outright defeat the monster. Well, didn't turn out that didn't turn out that way, as it was a bad night at the office for Cool Boy stuff, right? Uh, in a way, took control early. He had Fulton hesitant really from the opening round, and to the surprise of a lot of folks, in a way, took one of Fulton's best assets away, the left jab. And how did he do it? In a way, employed his own jab to the head and to the body consistently throughout the fight, right? The speed from the monster was just Roy Jones-esque at certain times. The way he was just popping in there with shots, the footwork and whatnot, able to basically methodically work, chop Fulton down, big right hand, first minute of the eighth, stun Fulton, follow up left hook, put him down, and from there, uh, smelling blood in the water, in a way pounced and stopped him. Your thoughts on how easy, in my opinion, that Inoue was able to beat Fulton?
So I was one of those that thought that Fulton was going to win by decision. I openly admit that. I thought that he was going to do that. Um, I saw and I tweeted this like minutes before he actually walked into the ring. Stephen Fulton had this look on his face that I had not seen before in any other fight. He was straight up nervous. When he walked into the ring and his trainer continued to try to say stuff in his ear to get him motivated and stuff, I just felt like it was like a little too much, which signaled to me that maybe there was some concern there. And then as he was doing that, I saw Fulton like looking up at the stands and looking to see all those people that were there to see them fight. I feel like he got caught up in the moment. He got caught up in the moment, and famously, I think Floyd Mayweather said this best. And I'm paraphrasing this. Um, when you're in a big fight, those lights are brighter than any other lights, and not everybody is ready for that moment. I think he got caught up in the moment, and it was clear when that bell rang, he was stiff. Um, and in a way, I think in a way sensed it early, but he wasn't sure. He wanted to still be cautious and not throw caution to the wind. And I think that that's what you saw with his jab, with his left jab, and he was getting his distance down packed and all that. Um, I just think that the minute in a way felt that uh, Fulton was his mind wasn't right, that's when he started doing all the things he needed to do. And he knew that the only way that was going to happen is to establish that left jab, even though he had a shorter reach than Fulton. But establishing that left jab was going to be key. And you could tell, like after the first round or during the first round, he was setting up that right hand. It wasn't going to be right then and there. It was going to be later. But when you watch the first round and you see the sequences and how he was stabbing the jab downstairs and upstairs, and then the up jab, and like a check hook in there in the mix, you could tell that he was waiting to set up that right hand at some point. It just at that moment wasn't the right time until it was.
A couple of follow up questions before, or follow up question before I go to Daniel. At least in my boxing circles, there was a bit of a debate about when should Fulton um, have a, when Fulton should have been in Japan and how long he should have been there. Now he arrived roughly 2 weeks, 10 days, 2 weeks before the fight. Do you think it was a mistake on his part to arrive that relatively late? That instead he should have been there much earlier to get used to the scene, to get used to the climate and whatnot. Because to your point, you're not the only one who said that who feel, excuse me, that Fulton looked uncomfortable really from the opening bell.
Yeah, so I don't know. I don't know if getting there earlier would have changed anything. Those, I mean, I think that he was still good throughout the week. It's just at that moment when you're about to step in the ring and he's fighting in front of the biggest crowd he's ever fought in front of. Like there's something to be said about that. And you can't you can't prepare for that in the gym. Like, you could only prepare for that through experience. And this was his first opportunity in doing that. For in a way, obviously it wasn't the first time. So it's one of those situations that I don't think him getting there earlier was going to make any type of difference. Experience is experience, and if one man has it more than the other, at times it'll show. And when I'm not talking about like in ring experience, I'm just talking about experience in general. And for Fulton, this was his first major event, and he's across. Uh, he's across the world in another country, and it's a lot. It's like him against a whole country. It might have felt like when he was in the ring, I'm sure. So that's a lot. That's a lot to ask for. Not making excuses for him. He got paid handsomely for that sacrifice. So, um, you know, it, he got taken care of for it. It's just that when he got there, I think he realized once he got into that ring that the oh shit moment happened, and then he could never get comfortable after that.
He began moving in the first round, but as early as round two, uh, he stood. He began to fight straight up, right? Didn't use his feet. And starting in round three, he began to fight more mid range and even tried to take the fight to Inoue. And once that happened, and again, once Inoue established the jab, I was like, Fulton has no chance. And we saw the result. I go to you, Daniel. In many ways, there was a divisive aspect to this fight, right? Um,
Hmm.
Polarizing as it was a polarizing undertone, uh, particularly when it came to Inoue. It played itself out before you heard it during before the fight, and it played itself out even afterwards, right? Uh, there was a lot of people who questioned Inoue. Is he really that good? Um, and even after the fight, uh, as much praise as Inoue received by many, there was still some in the boxing landscape uh, who still had doubts and still throwing shades. I'm not going to name the particular channel on YouTube. I'm not going to put them on blast, but uh, I heard a couple of channels on the replay doing like live fight commentary and whatnot, and their attitude was very dismissive of Inoue. Oh, he's not doing much. He's not doing this. Oh, he's not all that good. That the result was more of what Fulton did not do as opposed to what the monster was doing.
Well, when you look at the fight, I agree with Abraham in a bit that the moment may have caught on with Fulton because you could tell he was a little bit shook looking at that crowd. Not only looking at that crowd and knowing that probably north of 90% of that crowd is rooting against you. That plays into some fighters' games. Into some fighters can excel on it, some can't. But at the same time, it's not so much that what Fulton couldn't do. Granted, he had no answer for Inoue's jab. From the beginning, he had no answer to it. And as the fight wore on, I I don't like say this, but he became Broner-esque in the way he reacted to punches. Like, I mean, one of the things I always said about Adrian Broner, you punch him, he has to mentally reset. He can't counter punch effectively. He always has to be on offense. It kind of looks similar that way to Fulton because anytime he mounted a rally, anyway, threw a jab to the head, jab to the body immediately, and it stopped the momentum. But that's more to the kind of anyway being prepared, knowing I need to make sure that my jab's established because my opponent, in this case Fulton, is not a better counterpuncher. And also targeting the body the way he did. Taking the page out of Brandon Figueroa's book and focusing on the body as well as he did along with establishing the jab. Unfortunately, a lot of the issues that happened when channels got marred is something, unfortunately, that it's not just that YouTube channel. Tim Bradley had to bring it up in another fight that we have to talk about, which is the issue of how Inoue wraps his hands in a certain manner that's called stacking. And that obviously that was like chum to the water to a good amount of YouTube channels that, let's just say, have a certain slant towards Asian fighters. But all of that falls into the fact that this is the classic trope of sports, unfortunately. Whenever an event happens and somebody wins, we tend to focus more on the loser. We tend to focus more on what did this person or team didn't do and not focus on the fact that Inoue came with sound footwork, with a well-thought-out game plan, a good breakdown of the body that ultimately led to that beautiful jab to the body, and then almost immediately there was no way to react. That right hook, right to Fulton's chin, and as he's falling down, land a left hook there. That isn't something that's sudden. He built to that. So he should be more credited in that area. And let's also face facts, unfortunately. At least in this side of the Pacific and Atlantic, we tend to dismiss fighters that don't make it up, establish their base here. Anyways, even though he's fought here in the U.S., his base is pretty much solidly in Japan. And I know there's a certain resentment when it comes to some fan bases when it comes into that. But that shouldn't take away from the fact that Inoue did that to a fighter that was naturally bigger than him. And considering how the division is shapes up, it doesn't look like he's going to be in too much trouble in winning all the belts in 122. So then now he has to focus on 126. Granted, there's going to be a point where if he tries to go up too much, it'll catch up to him. But let's not dismiss the fact that Inoue did a masterful performance when it came to boxing and controlling the ring.
Sorry, I was on mute. Let's talk about the glove controversy. You touched on it briefly. You mentioned it. We previewed this fight last weekend. Between that time and the actual fight, controversy ensued as the camp of Fulton during a press event accused in a way of, in your words, stacking. Some would say loading his gloves. Threatened to pull out the fight if something was not done about it. The animosity continued at the weigh-in when both men were really in a heated stare down. I've never seen Inoue that animated, right? He was not going to move, and both fighters had to be separated. Member of Fulton's camp was in the locker room of Inoue, inspecting the gloves and how they was getting wrapped. You mentioned how Tim Bradley talked about it. He had basically accused in a way of stacking his gloves. Many fans on social media followed up. It was a heated back and forth debate and on message boards and whatnot. And for either of you or both of you, I should say, what do you make of the issue, quote unquote, with Inoue and the what and how he wraps his gloves?
So hearing from some like reputable cornermen that from Southern California that I have some respect for, they didn't have an issue with it. They said that though depending on the state, you could do different stuff here. So they didn't see that being an issue. I don't think that Fulton had so much of an issue with it, or he was surprised about it because when his trainer at the press conference mentioned about pulling out of the fight, like Fulton looked to his right or left and was like, "Excuse me," like it was something that it seemed like that wasn't even discussed between them two, and that he was hearing it for the first time with everybody else. I don't know if you guys caught that. So I don't think that he was worried about it that much. Uh, I mean, I don't. I don't think. I think that it was blown more out of proportion than it should have. Obviously, when it comes to hand wrapping, everybody points towards the Margarito situation, right? And so that's still fresh in our minds. Um, but I think that for this specific fight and the situation, I think it was just blown out of proportion.
Your thoughts, Daniel?
Yeah, my thoughts exactly because there are states that allow. I think Texas is one of them. I don't think New York is one of them, but I think New Jersey may be one of them that allow that type of hand wrapping style that anyway it's known for. And in all honesty, if there was an issue before, it should have come on much earlier in that area because this is boxing. There are camps, people from other camps watching the hand wraps because that's what they have to do to make sure that nothing, like I said, nothing like a resto or still allegedly Margarito happens. So to me, that's one of the things that probably bothered me about it was just how absolutist Tim Bradley was in the way he was saying it because Bradley, you fought in other areas before. You know that this is allowed in those areas. Now, that may tell something as far as the internal politics when it comes to top rank and where anyway sits in the internal politics of top rank. But at the end of the day, this is a practice that has been allowed. It's a practice that has never come up before. And I noticed that too, Abraham, that Fulton looked confused when his trainer mentioned it. And he was more confused because this would have been an issue that had been discussed in camp long before. You wouldn't make an accusation like that unless the fighter signs off on it, unless you're going into business for yourself, which is look what he did, which is kind of sad, unfortunately, in a way, because all you've done, unfortunately, is in a way taint Inoue's victory by feeding this and leaving the room for doubt at this day and age.
Two more topics surrounding this fight before we move on to other matters. Future of both men. We know that Inoue said after the fight during the post-fight interview that he would love a fight with Marlon Tapales. Tapales was in attendance, entered the ring afterwards, and it looks like they're going to fight at the end of the year, November, December. Fulton, champion, unified at 122. Is it all a guarantee that he's going to move up to 126? And how far can Inoue go? He's at 122 now. You have fans in the hours after the fight talking up. They would love to see him with Tank Davis. I don't know about that. Um, is 22 his cap? Is 26 his cap? Uh, the monster has been on a hell of a ride for the past decade, right? He's shown his greatness. Um, if he retires right now, I say he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. How how far up in weight do you think he can go?
All right. So for Fulton, I saw an Instagram post, and he is lobbying for a rematch. Maybe after the Tapales fight, because we know that Inoue is going to destroy Tapales, and he's going to become undisputed at 122. So there's an opportunity there potentially for Fulton to, fight him again for all four belts. That's an option. Fulton can go up to 126 and fight the winner of Brandon Figueroa and Ray Vargas whenever they make that happen. Um, I think that Fulton may wait around. He may wait for that, because we're just talking about. I mean, if Inoue fights in November, talking about maybe him fighting Inoue in a rematch in March. That's only what 5, 8 months away. So I don't say that I won't say that that's out of the realm of possibility, because it is possible. But if he doesn't get that fight, then he moves up to 126 and starts exploring up there. As Excuse me, as far as Inoue is concerned, I think Inoue's top weight class is going to be 130 pounds. I don't see him being any bigger than that. He's 30 years old right now, so um, 135 might be a little bit too far. I say 130 is his ceiling, and he may get, and call me crazy, but I think that he may get a Lomachenko fight in 2024, with Loma on his way out, kind of like Loma's last dance type of thing, but the name attached to it, and you can do that fight in Las Vegas, right? In a way, and Loma in Las Vegas is a monster fight, no pun. So um, I think 130 is going to be his cap. And Stephen Fulton, I think he's going to rest and wait it out and see what happens in November with Inoue, and see if he can get that rematch. And if he can't, then he'll move up to 126.
What say you, Daniel?
When it comes to Fulton, it might be wise to wait because while Inoue may campaign for a fight with Tapales, he may not get that right away. So he may decide to wait a little bit to see how the Figueroa Vargas situation shakes out, because with Figueroa, okay, you won the decision against him, even though I believe he lost to Figueroa. And Vargas is an interesting opponent, but it's an opponent that has flaws that Fulton can exploit. So it's a good to see the waiting game on it. But the money, if you're just looking at money, the rematch would anyways the only way to go at this stage. For it, for Inoue, that's going to be interesting because he beats the Palace. He's undisputed at 122. Do you wait for Fulton to have that rematch, or do you have that try to have that rematch at 126 pounds? Maybe with Fulton already grabbing the belt. There's different there's different avenues to look at it. As far as probably what his cap is, it might be 126 because once you get to 130, 135, unfortunately, there's a pretty decent gap in weight, and there's a pretty decent gap in power. Not only in the much that they can take, in what they can dish out. And I know we've already seen the comparisons that anyway when it came to Inoue and Pacquiao, but there's a large difference here. Pacquiao was more of a power puncher in his days at featherweight at 130. Anyways, a lot more of a boxer that has power. but he doesn't focus on it. He focuses on establishing his jab and establishing ring generalship. You may reach a weight class where that might not be enough anymore. But a Loma fight, Abraham, that's actually pretty interesting because I'm pretty sure Loma can go down to 130 if need be. But would he be willing to at this stage of his career? Because I think he's lobbying still for a rematch with Devin Haney. So there's a lot of open avenues, but I probably would say 126, 130 should be probably the most Inoue can go before that wall hits where your power isn't hurting people and the other people, they're naturally bigger, are hurting you.
Last but certainly not least, we all know the big fight this weekend, right? Spence and Crawford. Over on 3kingsboxing.com. Shout out to 3kingsboxing.com, your source of pure unadulterated boxing information. Shout out to the entire staff, crew, contributors, 2K, the man behind 3 Kings, Bo, head of media relations, senior writer. You got myself, fellow senior writer, Bakari, senior writer, all the contributors behind the scene, and Red, who does a lot of work on the site. We now have, in a way, number one on our top 10 fighter list. I've seen others now claiming that, in a way, is pound for pound the top fighter in the world. Others are saying, wait a minute, that position belongs to Crawford, or at the very least, it should be the winner of Crawford Spence. As it stands right now, as of this recording, when it comes to who is the mythical pound for pound top fighter in the world, is that Inoue?
Right now, if you had to ask me, and I think I had mentioned this, there has to be a really significant victory on Saturday by either guy, like a 3rd round knockout or a 12-round shutout, for that discussion to even be a real discussion. Anything outside of that, I think you have to say that Inoue is the number one pound for pound. Period. I don't know how you can see it any other way. It's tough. He just went undisputed and then just became unified on the next division up in one fight, and then is about to be potentially undisputed back to back. That's. I mean, he's on some run, and let's remember that he's been doing it at each weight class, dominating each weight class, and he's been active. He's been an active fighter. I think the inactivity is what really gets some of these guys from holding certain spots. But he's been active, and or active enough, I should say, to where people haven't forgot about him. And I think that he's number one. He's number one, and barring anything dramatic happening on Saturday, I think it'll remain as number one.
At the very least, Daniel, he's making a hell of a case for himself. To Abe's point, 4-division champion now, 108, 115, 118, 122. Last year in 2022, Inoue became undisputed at 118. That was his goal. He's moved up to 122 now and beat, in the minds of many, the best fighter in that division, is shooting to become undisputed at junior featherweight. Next, in a fight with Tapalas. And if he does that, right, undisputed in 2 divisions inside of a year, again, he's making a hell of a case. And how could you argue against otherwise that he's not?
That's the thing. He has a very, very strong case right now. He could finish the year out being undisputed in 2 weight divisions back to back. That's very,
in a 12-month
very tough
span
to do at this day and age. Yep. Very, very tough to do at this day and age. The main probably the main drawback where I could see some people saying not and waiting for the winner of Spence Crawford to do is because it is at one of the glamour divisions of boxing, welterweight. So that may be the situation where they see like, well, he became either Spence or Crawford. They became undisputed in this weight division. They didn't do this in, to say, a relatively weak division. Like, but that's probably the arguments into it. But he has a very, very strong case right now, considering the current landscape and considering that pound for pound was mythically made to make sure that the highlight fighters that are not heavyweights, that way, so some lists you have to take Usyk out of the list. He has a fair chance. Like, he has a fair case to it. That you can definitely say he's at least 1B in many ways. If you're gonna give the number one spot to the winner or Spence and Crawford, anyway, would it make the case to be at least 1B?
Now, in the aftermath of this win, a lot of people throwing around Tank as a fighter catchweight. I just don't see that happening. I don't see Inoue going up beyond featherweight. I agree with Daniel in that. And I don't see Tank moving below 135 pounds. Right? We know what's next up for Inoue is Tapales, and I think we're all in unison in believing that Inoue is a heavy, heavy favorite in a fight against Tapales. But a potential fight next year, down the road, should Inoue decide to move up to 126 pounds, could be Robeisy Ramirez, who fought on the undercard of Fulton. Inoue fought a local Japanese fighter by the name of Shimizu, stopped him in 5. And I'll go to you on this one, Daniel. Not only did he fight, I want to keep his name in the picture because we all knew Ramirez when he was coming out of the Olympics, two-time Olympic champion. A lot of hype when he turned pro, but had a dud in his professional debut as he lost. But he's learned his lesson, teamed up with Ishmael Salas, and he's gotten serious about the sport and has become better and better and better. Beat Isaac Dogbay to win the belt. I think this was in April the 1st, April Fools. And the more I see him, the more I'm beginning to like and respect him as a fighter. And I'll just put it this way. 126 pounds is open for someone to take over the division. I think Ramirez, as he keeps improving with Salas in the fold, I think he's a leading candidate to at some point be the best at 126 pounds. And if he keeps winning and progressing in this manner, I wouldn't mind seeing him against Inoue at some point in the next 12 to 18 months.
Robeisy, luckily, is adjusting to the pro style a lot more fluidly than a lot of his Cuban contemporaries have done beforehand. And what might have helped him is that loss early on in the career, because you can have a good debut and you start thinking that the pro game is not as different from the amateurs until you get to a point where you get rocked. But with Robeisy, he took that L early, and now you're starting to see how much more of a complete fighter he is, because you're watching him set up combinations. You're watching him be patient. And he has a little bit, he's getting the I'm better in each fight in knowing when to finish the fight. And like you mentioned it, featherweight, the very division we were talking about, it's open for, very, very open for business. So it wouldn't be out of the question for Inoue to fight Ramirez if he still maintains the belt at that stage. But we have to see where everything goes, because obviously You mentioned Fulton could become a player in that division, and at this stage, like I said, I wouldn't mind seeing Robeisy against either Figueroa or Vargas because that'll be an interesting stop, particularly against Figueroa. Because he's not as reckless as his brother, but he is as avid of a body puncher as his brother. So that may be an interesting matchup for Ramirez down the line. And it's a matchup that can be easily made. They can those type of fights, Bob and Al can work together.
The thing about Ramirez, Abe, is that we all know that Cuban fighters, based on the Cuban amateur system, the boxing skills are there, right? And so they can fight at distance. In this fight against Shimizu, he was in there against a much taller opponent, and for large chunks of the bout, he fought mid-range in. He found a home for the uppercut. He was able to go to the body effectively, and he showed power. He didn't fight in a style that which we have accustomed to seeing from Cuban fighters who from when they transition from amateur to pro, right? In that aspect, he's becoming a more rounded, complete fighter. He's not the boring style that Guillermo Rigondeaux was being criticized for years, right? Um, or even a Joel Casamayor throughout chunks of his career. There's an exciting aspect to him. He's willing to stand there and trade with the inherent skills that we all know he has. That's why I'm like, okay, there's real substance there. There's real meat to the bone, and I think he can put himself in a position to become really, really something serious. And again, a potential opponent for the monster down the road.
Yeah, so I think I read somewhere that Bob Arum said that he's going to. It looks like he's going to put Robeisy on Inoue undercard for his next fight again. So we could very well see Robeisy on the undercard in November if the Tapadas fight does indeed happen for that date, which all signals are pointing towards that happening in November. I wouldn't be surprised if they already had some preliminary paperwork already set, for that. Um, but yeah, I think the Robeisy Ramirez fight is going to be out there. They want to keep that interest because if they do the Robeisy Ramirez fight, it's probably going to be in Japan. So they want to continue to keep putting him on these shows with Inoue so that people can get an understanding, at least over there, of who he is and build his popularity up over there so that when the Inoue fight were to happen, or if the Inoue fight were to happen, it could be, a bigger deal. Robeisy Ramirez, man, he put it all together this past fight, and he put an exciting performance, one that people aren't going to forget quickly, and that I there's going to be if not already, a following is going to develop for him where he is going to attract and demand people's attention. And he did exactly what he was supposed to do, and that's finish this guy in a great way to where he looks, great. And he did that. He did that, and you couldn't do it on a bigger stage with everybody tuning in to watch the main event. So I think he has a bright future, and if he can potentially get some one of those titles that are out there, or the other one of the other sanction bodies, and then Inoue comes up and fights him for two titles, that could be another situation, and they could be putting that together for him that way. So, um, Robeisy Ramirez, man, I know I'm tuning in the next time he's fighting for sure, and he's gonna be high up on the card. He's already pretty much stamped his ticket to be on the televised portion of any card in the future.
100%, 100%. Let's move on to this next fight quickly. I don't want to spend too much time. George Kambosos and Maxi Hughes fought in Oklahoma this past weekend, and this is for whoever wants to touch it. Someone tried to convince me why that decision in favor of Kambosos was some BS. I mean, I watched the fight, and I've seen no evidence to say that I've seen no evidence which to suggest that Kambosos won that fight. I thought Hughes won it clearly. I thought he outboxed him from jump. I'm gonna ask you again. Convince me why that decision wasn't a bunch of BS.
So I'm going to tell you that I can't convince you because it was BS, but I will also add that the one judge that had it 114-114 is going to be one of the judges for Spence and Crawford. So there you have it.
Any evidence, Daniel, or do you want to move on?
No, there is none. This is probably the decision that has left a lot of bad taste in people's mouths throughout the whole weekend because, unfortunately, there's no way. Like not even Kambosos promoter Lou DiBella tried to shake that off. And unfortunately, like what Abraham mentioned, one of those judges is not being rewarded with a marquee assignment. And probably the one that gave, unfortunately, the one that probably gave the most fair scorecard to Maxi Hughes. Because the other two cards, the ones that scored it for Kambosos, are just garbage.
I have nothing else to add. I was going to talk about Devin Haney in the news. We all know but unless you've been sleeping under a rock, you know the situation with him. There's still word. We still await what he's going to do next. WBC gave him an exemption to decide whether he wants to fight at 135 or move on, or he's going to move up at 140. But there seems to be a consensus that he is going to move up, targeting a fight with Prograis. Doing the card for Kambosos, Hughes. They've reached out to Bill Haney, Devin Haney's father and trainer, and he said that they're going to try to make a fight with Prograis, and then they're going to try to make a fight with Teofimo Lopez, who we talked about last week. Basically, Teofimo Lopez, who said he's going to keep that WBO belt. That wasn't a big secret. We all knew he was that supposed retirement. Those were just words from him that he was going to fight again. Anybody quickly on the news surrounding Devin Haney and what he's going to do next? Supposedly Kambosos, and then shoot for a big fight with Teofimo. Shoot, he beat Rougarou, which is far from a guarantee.
Yeah, so I think it's going to be Haney Prograis next. I think Eddie Hearn is going to overpay for it and get that fight. I think Haney's going to vacate all the belts at 135, and Top Rank is probably in the best position to collect most of them and have them on their side. So I could foresee them dominating that division as far as doing internal matchup tournament style for the next 2 years at least. But yes, Devin Haney reaches Prograis. It just seems like that is a natural fight to happen next. And then as far as the Teofimo stuff and all that, we'll see how all of that shakes out. But for right now, I think we get Regis and Haney next.
Yeah,
Cool.
that's probably. Second.
Go ahead, Daniel.
I was about to say, that's probably the avenue that's where it's going to go, because we know what fight Bob is probably going to try to give Haney if he stays in there at 135, stays with him. And that's Shakur. And it's looking like Devin wants not a lot to do with Shakur. So going back to Matchroom, going back to Eddie, fighting Ruger seems like a pretty decent option, but it's an option where his style of fighting may not work against somebody like Ruger, who's naturally been 140 pretty much almost his entire career. And we've seen Haney get rocked before. So that's going to be an interesting tell because whether they try to do the Ruger route or if they even try to stay on top and do the same way, go with the Teofimo route. That may not be a bad idea either, but we've seen what Teofimo can do. If you give him a fighter that, yeah, he fights down to his opponents, but he also rises to the occasion when it needs to be. So it's going to be interesting to, but probably the safest bet's going to be him or Ruguru. And like I said, that's not a slam dunk of him winning.
Absolutely. So just want to give you a brief update on that. And now let's get to these fights that's happening this weekend, and the big fight that's on the mouths of everyone. Spence Crawford. We'll talk about that last. I'm going to split these fights up, gentlemen. I go to you, Abe, on Friday in Vegas. First for Seniesa Estrada. She's going to be the headliner going to be the main event of a card in Vegas. She defends her unified 105-pound titles against Leonela Yudica, who's former long-reigning champion at 112 pounds. Yudica's moving down to 105 for this fight. Yudica's up there in age, 34, but she's the most experienced and accomplished opponent of Superbad's career at this point. Estrada became unified champion in her last outing in March over Ruprecht. Got hit with a few shots, right hands in particular, in that fight. Do you think that Yudica can offer anything, whether it's size, the experience that comes with a nearly 8-year run as world champion at 112 pounds? Do you think she has anything that could trouble Seniesa Estrada, or is Superbad just one of those fighters who's fighting at such a high level it just doesn't matter?
Yeah, so I mean, she had a close fight with Areli Musino. This is the thing, man. I think Superbad is just at a different level, man. When we start talking about speed, angles, feints, she's just performing at a different level, man. And you would have to have have to have some serious punching power to keep her off, and I just don't see that happening. And Seniesa is gonna walk right through her punches, and try to get her out of there.
At the very least, I think that she has such a unique style. A lot of people say is Lomachenko, prime Lomachenko-esque, in terms of her ability to create angles and make fighters miss and make them pay. The way she throws punches, almost fight like she's in the Matrix, right? And because of that and movement, and as she has said during the pre-fight, that she thinks that Yudica, who tends to move a lot, but Estrada feels that Yudica is weak in the gut. So I expect her to go to the body early and often in this fight. Will she get a stoppage? I don't know, because Yudica is the bigger woman, but I think that Superbad just has too much speed and skill and defense when she's on her game. She's going to be too much for Yudica. Let's move on, Daniel. On the undercard of the aforementioned Spence Crawford card, you have Cruz fighting Giovanni Cabrera. Now, a lot of people talking about Cruz potentially facing Tank Davis later on this year, but first he has to go through Cabrera. How do you size up that fight?
Yep, this is pretty much Isaac Cruz's audition for that rematch with Tank. And this is a situation where it could be a trap fight. It definitely could be a trap fight because, unfortunately, Cruz already seen what he can do against Tank. And he already may be looking too much ahead into that. And that may be room for an upset. But I do believe he'll probably pull through. He knows what's at stake. He knows how much is at stake. And he knows he needs to get the job done. Otherwise, at this stage of his career, and unfortunately with lightweight division still technically being held by one man, we don't know if you're going to get the chance again at being the marquee, especially in the title scene again.
I see our other guest has joined us. Marquise of Weak Sauce Radio on Twitter. Thanks for joining us. Let's get you caught up here, and specifically,
yes, sir.
Your reaction to Inoue's dismantling of Stephen Fulton yesterday.
You joked about it with Buddy Kyle over at the show we do. Mentioned that 90 seconds into that fight, you saw that Stephen Fulton was flat-footed and couldn't keep up with Inoue's power jab. That part,
right.
From that part on the opening round, that fight was over, guys. It was just a matter of time. And that body shot, that 1-2 that set up that knockout, nasty. I think he kind of TFM with himself a little bit, guys, because he got on the turnbuckle before he had to turn back around and had to get the fuck back off of it a little bit. But I thought he was impressive nonetheless. Besides that,
a couple of follow-up questions here. Number one, you hear in boxing Twitter talking about potential fight with him and Tank. We all know that Inoue is going to fight Tapales later on this year. We expect him to win that comfortably.
Mike, not to cut you off, that just the conversation on boxing Twitter of Tank Davis fighting Inoue just confirms once again that boxing Twitter may possibly be special needs. I'm just saying, but go ahead.
Yeah. I'm gonna say a couple more questions. The polarizing aspect that was part and parcel of this fight before, during, and after. Both ends of the scale regarding Inoue. A lot of people was like, I told you so when it comes to Inoue. A lot of people were like, but then on the other side, there were folks like, oh, he's not that good, and he's still not that good. Following the fight with Fulton, that more had to do with what Fulton didn't do than as opposed to what Inoue did. How do you think, what your reaction to what it seems to be in these boxing social media streets that it's either or with Inoue. Either you really, really like him, or you can't stand him and you think he's sus, and he always will be sus.
Well, there's always going to be the wide spectrum, and the best part about it, as you know, after any big time fight like this, Michael, is the overreaction to this fight, and we got the broad spectrum and the gambit of the overreaction on this, to him fighting people in 14 different weight classes, to him either being number one on your pound for pound list, or you have him at number 100 because he fought Fulton but didn't show up. I mean, it's the usual stuff, to be honest with you. But at the end of the day, people just can't discredit the fact that this man took Stephen Fulton's belt, let's not act like Stephen Fulton was just this random slouch here. He pretty much has been held pat at 122 here. And this is just the new guy on the block, and he just knocked him off the block. Is this the way the sport works? People need to grow up and figure it out. And
last but certainly not least, in your eyes, given who he beat and given what he has done throughout his career up to this point, as Abe mentioned, the man has been on a roll, and the resume keeps building and building. Giving on this date, July 26th, Crawford Spence has not happened. Right now, is Inoue top pound for pound fighter in the world?
It's hard to argue it unless you have your favorite heavyweight Usyk up there, or along those lines, or if you have one of these guys that hasn't fought on July 29th yet. That's really the only other options you got. So, no, but I think Inoue's there.
Cool. Now that you're here, let's get you into the discussion of catch up where we are now. We're previewing the fights, and I'll get you right into the mix. And on the undercard of Spence Crawford, the return of Nonito Donaire. We all remember him last time out. He got blitzed, destroyed by the aforementioned Inoue, second round in their rematch June of last year. He's fighting for the vacant bantamweight title, WBC version, that Inoue vacated when he moved up to fight Fulton. fighting a guy by the name of Alexandro Santiago.
A name you'll never forget.
Go ahead.
A name you'll never forget. Was it something Santiago? I don't know. I think this is just Donaire getting another chance to get another belt again here, guys. I don't think it's it. This fight honestly would have been more interesting had it took place actually on that Frank Martin card when it should have took place.
Why did you say that?
Because that Frank Martin card at the end of the day was pretty meh. Yeah, without this fight on there. I'm just being transparent.
Now let's move on to the main event here. The big fight, arguably the fight of the decade, fight of the 2020 so far. We've been talking.
Tyson Fury and Negreanu may have an argument with you, man. And Jake Paul and Nate Diaz are entering the chat right now. Are you sure about that?
Stop it.
Okay.
We've been talking about it for years. Spence Crawford is finally going to happen. Let's start up the conversation with you, Marquise. The keys to the fight for both men.
This is the part where I'm trying to figure out who's going to throw more punches than what we've seen from these guys in the last few years, because these are pretty economical punching guys if you really think about it. So this has the makings to be greatness or the makings to be Easter Bartholomew. So I'm hoping we get something on the front end of this, but really think that's going to be the key of it, because we see what Spence does when he presses the issue. When fights like Garcia, when he didn't get to Ugas. We see how Crawford does after the first few rounds after slow starts. Those are my two keys for it.
I'll go to you. The thing with Spence, many detractors of him would note that the inactivity, the myriad of injuries over the years, whether it was the car wreck, whether it was the broken orbital bone, right? He's coming. His last fight was nearly a year and a half ago. Will all of that catch up with him in this fight, or is he one of those special athletes, Sugar Ray Leonard type folks, who can take significant time off and then just flip the switch and just come back in top form?
He's a flip the switch type of guy, but what concerns me, and it wasn't not to like correct you or anything like that, it was the detached retina that he had.
Yeah, detached retina. I my apologies if I didn't say that right.
Yeah, I think he can turn it on. He's a guy that turns it on. My concern with Spence is that he's been getting the last fight more so than the Danny Garcia. So post accident, he was getting hit cleanly with the overhand right. Now, if you look at it, that's on his left side, right? And so he had that detached retina surgery on his left eye. I was wondering if he had problems seeing those punches, and if that's the case, not so much not completely, but maybe he's a little bit blurry on that side. And if that's the case, we see Crawford more in conventional than we see him in southpaw, and he may try to land those big right overhand rights more often because they seem like they land on Spence a lot.
My only pushback is that I prefer Bud orthodox. Southpaw as opposed to orthodox. I think when he fights out of the orthodox stance, he tends to get hit more from righty to lefty. Then again, he's fighting a fellow southpaw here, so where he goes in terms of how he decides to fight, will he begin southpaw, move to righty? Will he stay exclusively lefty? Switch back and forth. We will see. I'll go to you on this one, Daniel. Spence has made a big thing out of Crawford's resume in the welterweight division. I've seen others make that same critique that at 147 pounds, the competition for Bud has not been up to snuff. I would argue that, as Abe mentioned, how Spence can be a guy who can kind of flip the switch. I think Bud can as well. One of these guys, when the competition raises, he raises his level of performance. We saw it in the Porter fight when Bomac told him he's behind, and then the light came on from Bud, and he took care of business and eventually took him out. What say you about those who question Crawford's resume at 147 pounds and that he's fighting the toughest fighter of his career in Spence at 147 pounds, and he may have some troubles, particularly given how Spence loves to, when he's on it, he throws a lot of punches and he loves to dent that body.
Yes. Now, he does do that. Now, it's a fair argument when you don't take into account the fact that Spence benefited at the fact that PBC pretty much has a prohibitive hold monopoly on the division when it comes to top contenders. And now with, like I said, with Virgil Ortiz being in many ways forced to move up to 154 for his own health, outside of that, and Alexis Rocha and Golden Boy, there isn't a lot of fighters that you can say that aren't affiliated with PBC that Spence wanted to be able to pick from. So that's a fair assessment in that area. The area that may be a little bit more difficult is Bud, granted, has been a little bit more active than Spence in many ways. And the one area where that, to me, that Bud has an advantage over Spence is that Bud has a genuine mean streak in him. And it's not a mean streak where he just talks trash to the person before the fight. He fucks you up and then talks the trash after the fight. He has that in him. And we've seen it over and over and over again in his fights, 140 and 147. If he feels slighted, or if he feels like that people are viewing him as the underdog, he's going to show you why he's one of the best fighters in the world. And you take into the account the fact that he can switch stances much more fluidly than I've seen Spence do. In fact, that's probably one of the running jokes that once Bud turns softball, you know he saw something. So that's going to be one of the areas we have to see, because even though like both of these fighters wanted this fight, even though both these fighters made sure this fight happens, the onus has been a lot more on Spence as far as like positive press. So Bud may take that as one of those little notes that his mean streak can actually pop off, and you may see that show up and particularly target that left eye that was still damaged, because that's one of the areas that we're still not sure Spence fully recovered from.
147 pounds is not the easiest weight for Errol Spence to make. Have any of you guys heard anything about Spence having some weight issues, or the fact that he's now has a nutritionist in the fold, that everything is everything is good when it comes to managing of his weight?
I haven't heard anything. Although, like, yeah, I mean, you know, people looked bad during fight week anyway. But seeing Spence on the arrival video, man, his eye sockets were sucked in like bad already, and I was like, well, you know, those are usually when you have to do them deep weight cuts. That's where you see it the most. But it could also be that he's a big guy and it may show more on him than someone else. But I just felt like it just seemed like he's taken the bigger weight cut than of the two.
Right, because this fight was basically made on relatively short notice, and I saw the same thing earlier today at the quote unquote arrival. Even though Spence has been in Vegas for a couple of weeks now, correct me if I'm wrong. I did see the emaciated look in the face, particularly around the eyes, cheekbones, jawline area. Uh, I wonder if that could be the same thing with Bud, because he's been wearing heavy clothing, hooded clothing, long covering his whole body throughout. So I wonder if there may be some issues with him making weight because low key, 47, he can make the weight, but it's not the most comfortable for him at this point in his career. At age, I want to say, was he 35, 36? But we will see more of that during the weigh-in. Let's get to official predictions here, everybody. Let's get Marcus back on the stream. Official predictions here. Let's start with you, Daniel. Your official predictions for Errol Spence, Terence Crawford for undisputed at 147 pounds.
I know we talked about this a little bit before, like before we started the broadcast. I'm sticking to my guns because like the more I keep thinking about it, because I'm when you guys mentioned it, I decided to look up a little bit of the fight photos, and yeah, Spence is starting to get close to. We have to see how it is on Friday, but he's getting close to Skeletor Brandon Rios as far as how badly he looks trying to make weight, and that's not normally a good sign that you want to have. But to me, I think Bud's probably going to win more than likely by knockout because given the stage, given who's running the show, he kind of knows a lot of the cards are stacked against him. But he just needs one thing for that mean streak to come off. And we always have to keep an eye. Like if he turns southpaw early, then he sees something early on and he's going to finish it in. If he turns southpaw late, then it's going to be more of attrition. But to me, Bud is one of those people that like you mentioned, we saw with Sean Porter. If he feels he's winning and people are telling him he's not, he'll make sure that he won at the end. So I say Bud by knockout.
Ooh.
I'll go to you, Marquise. Your official prediction for Spence Crawford.
You know what? It's pretty much everything Daniel said in reverse. I'm going with Spence on points. I think what's going to happen, guys, is that this fight's going to look a lot like Mikey Garcia versus Errol Spence, with Mikey Garcia playing Crawford, giving more pushback. But I think it's going to be a close decision. I think it's going to be Spence on points. I'm picking the underdog here. I'm going with a different angle for once.
And last but certainly not least, you Abe, your prediction for Spence Crawford.
I'm going Spence by decision. As I mentioned before the broadcast, it's giving me Canelo Triple G1 vibes where I think that Crawford may win the fight in theory, but not get the decision.
Okay. If this was the Errol Spence 2018, 2019, I would go with him because I think because of his work rate, because of the power, because I think his boxing skills are really slept on. And we've seen Bud hurt, right, to the head and body. My reservation is the injuries. My reservation is the time off. He's had maybe 2-3 fights in the last 3-4 years. The detached retina, the injuries that he suffered from that car accident. I just don't think from a physical standpoint, he may not be the fighter that he once was. And I think he does have major issues making 147 pounds, at least more issues getting down to 147 than than Crawford does, and I think that Crawford is one of these special fighters who, again, he raises his level of performance when he's in there against a better fighter. I think Crawford's going to be at his absolute prime. I think Spence is going to give it his all. I think it's going to be a heck of a fight. I think Spence is going to take the fight to him, but I think in the end, I think Crawford is going to find a way to win and win by decision. Any last words from any of you guys on this fight before we begin to shut things down?
I would just say that I think that the person that makes the mistakes early is the one that's not going to come out in victorious at the end. But I see both of these guys like doing chess match first 3 or 4 rounds and then it really opening up around the 5th round.
And I think we're going to sign off on that note. Again, if you're checking us out on YouTube, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Get our notifications on Pound for Pound Box Report. Help the algorithms get us monetized and all that jazz. Going to go around again, as I said earlier in the show. Please go to the site for any and all information. P4pboxreport.com. If you wish to email us, do so. P4pboxing at P4pboxingreport.com. Check out links to where you can find us all over social medias. Find us all over the podcast realm where you can donate, and it's also check out the link to BODI Body, formerly known as Beach Body on Demand. Going to go around to the panel here. Normally, with Gail being here, I will begin and start things with ladies first, but since she's not, I'm going to you, Daniel from 4 Boxing News and the Inscriber. For those who want to talk the sweet science, for those who want to talk pro wrestling, for those who want to talk the NBA, especially when it comes to the Miami Heat, let the folks know where they can find you.
All right, folks, you can find me on Twitter. X, whatever Elon is trying to call it now.
Whatever that mess he's putting up, yeah, whatever that mess is, because I refuse.
Yeah, like whatever he's calling it now. Ruckus 99, RWKZ 99. Yes, I am also on Mastodon. Yes, I am also on Threads. And the main thing we have to put at this fight takeaway is this. We've talked about the beginning, Inoue Fulton. We're finishing with Spence and Bud. 2 fights where the fighters themselves sat down, hashed things out, and made the fight happen. Did not let any promotional or borders block them from doing this. And this is something that men's boxing has to do. The women have been doing it. The women have been doing it much better at that stage. But these 2 fights should show that, it shouldn't be dependent upon more or if Bob works with Al or if Oscar works with Eddie in that area. They should just have the fighters make the fights, and let's get it on.
And I echo that from Daniel. And I know Fulton has been receiving a lot of shade, and people are getting their rocks off in terms of jokes. But you got to give it up. I salute him because to Daniel's point, he went out of his way to make the fight. Right, there was an opportunity for him to move up to 126 and fight a rematch for Figueroa for the interim belt. But when Inoue basically laid the challenge and said he was interested in fighting Fulton accepted. He did what fighters are supposed to do. When presented with the opportunity to fight the best of the best, they accept and they take the fight, and that's what he did. And he should be saluted for that. Same with Spence and Crawford. The fans have been calling it for years, and the reason the fight got made is because those 2 gentlemen came together. All the outside noise, they put that aside, and let's get on the phone, let's talk to each other and hammer out a deal. And they're doing that. And as a result, what the men did not do in 2022 and what the ladies did in 2022, we're seeing more of these fighters on the men's side starting to do that. beginning with Fulton and Inoue and Bud and Crawford and hopefully Wilder and Ruiz and Joshua later on this year and Charlo moving up to one from 54 to 68 to fight Canelo and Sonny Edwards and Bam Rodriguez hopefully later on this year as well. What the ladies did last year, the men in boxing, they're stepping up and they're doing it this year. And as a result, the sport is thriving right now, and it's a banner year. It's shaping out to be so far this year, men and women as a result. And I'll go to you, Marquez from Weak Sauce Radio. While you let it, give the name of your podcast for those who want to talk the sweet science or anything else with you, or even baseball. Let the folks know where they can find you.
Yeah, Weak Sauce Radio, all the social media platforms, Threads, Instagram, Twitter, whatever, 1996X, whatever marketing they're using this weekend, who cares? But it's all the same there. Say What You Say Boxing Podcast, wherever you find your podcast, wherever you find boxing stuff. It's all out there as well. Want to mention as well, because this is a big-time fight, guys, and I think you guys are missing the point, Mike. It's something you mentioned earlier when I hopped on here. You mentioned the overreaction to Inoue Fulton, and I don't know about you guys, but this is Christmas in July. This weekend and this Saturday, if you thought the overreaction and the bad takes were happening on a Tuesday midday were bad, wait till you hear the Inoue conspiracies and Deontay Wilder comparisons on Saturday night, guys. I cannot wait for this fight, and I cannot stress that enough.
Indeed. Last but certainly not least, Abe Gonzalez from Pro Box TV, Fanside MMA, for those who want to talk boxing, those who want to talk MMA. Let the folks know where they can hit you up.
Well, thank you, man. Again, thank you for having me on. They can hit me at AbeG718 on Twitter, X, whatever it is called, Instagram, Threads. Just hit me. I'm on Fanside MMA and Pro Box TV, and I'll be in Vegas tomorrow, and we'll see what happens.
Absolutely. On the next episode of Pound for Pound Boxing Report, we will have a recap of Spence Crawford, have a recap of Donaire fighting Santiago for the vacant WBC belt at 118. Also recap Isaac Cruz and Cabrera, super bad Estrada defending her minimum weight titles against Yudica, and we will have a preview of Amanda Serrano, Heather Hardy.
Yuck.
The YouTuber
yuck.
and the MMA are fighting. And this, and again,
man.
Box.
You
Sports
got to.
Illustrated.
You got to, Michael.
Sports Illustrated. What are you doing? What are you doing with Spence Crawford, Inoue, and Fulton happening? What are you doing having Paul as the cover of your latest edition and then put him in a boxing context? What are you doing?
It could be worse. It could be them following John Moxley around again, giving absolutely nothing to provide in articles. So, I mean, pick your poison there.
Oh, dear. I'm just saying, the biggest fight in the last decade, and you have him on the cover of your magazine. Do better, be better. That's all.
They need clicks, man. You know what I do.
Yeah,
Whatever.
that's sadly the state of unfortunately, of Sports Illustrated.
They is a CPM business over at the Illustrated. You think they care about sports? They haven't cared about sports in 3 decades.
We'll put it to you this way. It's gotten to the point where with Sports Illustrated that not even a swimsuit issue can save them.
Guys, Rick Riley's not walking through that door. And it's okay. It's over.
Apparently. So I'm not going to talk about that fight, but I will talk about the fights on the undercard. Serrano fighting a rematch against Heather Hardy. It's anticipated that should Serrano win, her next opponent will be
she will.
Against
Spoiler.
130-pound champion Alicia Baumgartner. On the undercard as well, Shadeja Green fighting who's mandatory across the board at 168 pounds. She's fighting Olivia Curry. Hopefully, Green win. She gets the shot at Savannah Marshall for undisputed belts at 168 pounds. We will talk about those fights, and we will preview Irislandi Lara fighting two-division champion. No, well, yeah, two-division. Fighting Danny Garcia. I forgot if he was welterweight. Yeah, he was welterweight champion. My bad. But yeah, we will preview that fight as well. So again, I want to thank everybody who joined us. For Daniel from Boxing News and Ian Squire, for Marquise of Weak Sauce Radio, Abe of Pro Box TV, Fansite MMA. This has been episode 414 of Pound for Pound Box Report. I hope you're excited for Spence Crawford as we are. I hope you were as enthusiastic about Fulton Inoue as we were. Great week in boxing. Bask in what's happening right now. So again, episode 414 of Pound for Pound Box Report. I am your host, Michael. We'll see you guys next time. Y'all have a good one. Everybody have a good evening. Good night.
All right, later, guys.
All right.